Like many of you here who are of a certain age, I will never forget where I was when I heard Dr. King had been killed. I was a junior in college. And I remember hearing about it and just feeling such despair. I walked into my dorm room and took my book bag and hurled it across the room. It felt like everything had been shattered. Like we would never be able to put the pieces together again. You know, I joined a protest march in Boston. I wore a black armband. I worked to convince my college to recruit more students and faculty of color. But it felt like it wasn't enough. And then a few months later, we heard of the assassination of Robert Kennedy, whose eloquence and courage had helped to persuade the people of Indianapolis to follow Dr. King's example of nonviolence. I remember wandering through the encampments of the Poor People's March on Washington, talking with those who had come from literally around the world to witness against poverty and injustice. It felt like the doors had closed on the hope that so many had felt. But that would have been such a disservice to Dr. King. To have taken the despair, the outrage, and just ended with that. Dr. King taught us everything we needed to know about his legacy and how to carry it forward. But in the end, it is up to each of us to walk that path. It is not an easy path. It was hard for him, it is hard for us. Sometimes we take steps backward, so maybe then we can figure out a new way forward. But I have abiding confidence and, yes, faith that we can make our way to higher ground. Whether or not we make it to the mountaintop, whether we make it to the promised land is not for us to know. But I believe with all my heart it is for us to try. And when we get tired and when our faith starts to waver, we can of course remember Dr. King's faith in us. How being dog-tired that night, he left the Lorraine Motel and came here. I'm sure he would have liked a good night's sleep. I'm sure that he thought, Reverend Abernathy had done a fine job and there were so many good preachers there. But he felt called and he answered the call. As the scripture tells us, when we are called, we must answer. Who will you send? Send me. So here we are. And let us remember and return to the well springs of faith from which he drew. One should reread Dr. King's last speech, just as we ask children to memorize the I Have a Dream speech. One should reread that last speech. Be reminded of the prophet Amos, who did shout and commend us to let justice run down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream.